This is the CONORAD alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
For 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim, and today is, I almost lost the date. How is that? June 4th, 2023. This is episode 319 of Workshop Radio. How the hell is everyone out there tonight? We got a guy that I'm going to beat the meat around with in a few minutes. We got Kyle, the Backwoods Butcher, coming on. Real quick, we'll get the announcements out of the way, and then we're going to have a great conversation. First off, it's Sunday night, so we can't forget our sponsor. My good friend, Amy Dingman of A Farmish Kind of Life. You can support her in a bunch of ways. I love the Farmish papers. Every single month, I get an old-fashioned paper newsletter in my mail. I almost wish there was an audio cassette or an LP or an 8-track, something like that. It'd be great to have, but I love it. It's nice to have something tangible. There's something about being able to handle and hold something and read it. And it's always full of good nuggets of wisdom. And this week's episode on the Survival Podcast, let's back up on that tonight. It's been one of them nights on the Farmish Kind of Life podcast. Her episode was You Can't Go Back Again. I give it a listen. It was really good. It's just the whole idea of no matter what happens, you can never quite go back to the way things were. It's the whole idea of you can't step in the same river twice, but it was a good episode. If you want to be inspired, give it a listen. Next, Patch of the Month Club, guys. Just picked up a new subscriber a couple nights ago. I really appreciate you for that. If you're into it and you want to subscribe, $10 a month, $100 a year, patchofthemonth.co. That's the easiest way to do it. And every single month you get at least a little patch. And quite often I throw a little extra in there for you as well. And finally, the Telegram group. I haven't been plugging that much lately, but it's still growing slowly and steadily. And it is just the place that all the workshop delinquents, all the cool kids hang out. But honestly, it's just it's the place where we inspire each other and kick each other in the ass. So if you need a community, or if you're, lurking in this community for a long time, and you haven't come by and joined the Telegram group, even if you're not on Telegram, do me a favor and give it a shot. You won't be disappointed. And finally, today's tool is the 4-pack cat ratchet straps. If anybody asks me all the time, hey, Tim, what ratchet straps do you use? It's these. I get them at Costco. You can get them on Amazon. They're like $35 for a 4-pack. So if I leave one on the back of the truck and I lose it in the highway, it doesn't really matter. So if you're interested, links to everything I talked about are in the description below. And with that, let's bring on Mr. Backwoods Butcher. Hang on one second there. Hey, brother, how are you?
Good. What's going on, Tim?
Not much at all. So you're in New Hampshire, are you?
Oh, we're way up here.
Yeah. Good to have you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Oh, we chatted a little before, but I'm from close to that area originally, Nova Scotia. So it's grew up reading Stephen King, so I love the Maine accent and Oh
yeah, it's a specific one that no one really touches on. Like, unless you've listened to like the comedians Justin McKinney or Bob Marley, like they're the only people who bring up the Maine accent at all.
Absolutely. I'm not really sure. They're telling you it's time for you to take pride in something here. So the Lots Project's pretty. I have my suspicions. We're going to have some extra delinquents in the chat this evening. So
I have that sneaking suspicion as well.
So I was told by a couple of people whose opinion I don't know. I don't know if I value it, but I guess I trust them a little bit. But Brian from the Lots Project and Josh, the Renegade Butcher, said that I really needed to get this dude from New Hampshire on. I'll stop saying it that way eventually, I promise. And so they said this dude named Kyle, the Backwoods Butcher. So tell me a bit about you, brother. Who are you? Where the hell did you come from? And I don't know if you know this, but we have a tradition here. What was your very first job for pay, whatever you want to say, the oldest one you can remember?
My very first job was landscaping for my uncle. I think I was 13 when I first started. When I was like super young, he had a pretty booming business with it, with property maintenance and stuff like that. And by the time I was like 13, he basically just had one like house that he would do, but it was the grandson of the guy who invented Cummins engines. It was one of his 14 houses. Like it sleeps something crazy, like 60 people, had like $250,000 movie theater, and like they literally leveled the top of a mountain to put it on there. Like, because so I grew up in Meredith, New Hampshire, which if you've ever heard of Lake Winnipesaukee, like that's where that is. I guarantee you someone is listening going, I've been there. Like it's just one of those tourist trap areas. But so all the rich people have houses on the lake. So it's during the summer, we're absolutely a crazy tourist town, which I ended up working for the Hannaford in town, in the meat department. That's where I really got my start with it. And at the time, I was getting out of high school. At that point, I was saying, I'm going to go in the Army. Like I already had papers and everything ready to sign, everything. And I won Employee of the Year stocking shelves at Hannaford. I was like, okay. And all the different departments were like, hey, come over here. And meat department paid more. And I was like, yeah, I'll make bank the rest of the summer, hang out with my friends and go off to boot camp. That'll be fine. And I just fell in love with it. Something about it, I was all of a sudden like, oh, because at that point I was 18 and really never put that much thought into where my food comes from. Like I knew meat was animals, but like I had never really put any thought into it.
Sure.
And the manager worked for a guy who had his own like custom side shop. And as soon as I realized that that was a thing, I was like, oh, I'm going to learn how to do that for sure. Like that sounds awesome. So left Hannaford, got an apprenticeship at a small rinky-dink shop that the guy used to be a meat cutter, did another career, and then was retired and was like, I'm going to start a butcher shop in the middle of a crack den, essentially. And that's what it was. He bought a convenience store. And to put context into it, the week after I started, they had busted the biggest Oxycontin stash house in New Hampshire's history at the time, 3 houses away. Like, so
it's legit. Yeah, it's a crack house. So it was. Yeah, sure.
But he taught me quite a bit. We did like a retail case. So I like got to learn the basic retail cuts, some of the specialty stuff, like the meat pinwheels where you like pound out steak and put sausage in it and roll, like all the fancy stuff I kind of learned there. But again, it was half the time I was baking chocolate chip cookies and working the register. Like that's the hard part about an apprenticeship that a lot of people don't talk about is in whatever you're doing. And I guess people do talk about it. You're doing the grunt work. You're doing all of it. But you need to learn all that stuff before you can learn the next stuff. Like if you don't know how to do the basics, like the biggest thing that was hammered into me was wrapping, like freezer wrapping, all the cuts and stuff like that. Cause we did like bulk freezer orders and we also did deer and stuff like that in the fall. We did a couple cows. So we would paper wrap everything. And it was a slow day when I first like kind of just started. And my boss brought in a bag, like a shopping bag full of stuff, like including like a basketball and just random implements. And he goes, wrap these until they're perfect. And just left me there for 7 hours. It was awful. But now I can wrap a ham.
Sure.
Like it's all of this little stuff that is, if you don't know this, you're not going to be able to, in the long term, be a professional at it because you haven't walked the whole path, I guess. But worked there for a while. He ended up going out of business.
Okay.
Naturally, because as soon as he stopped selling lottery tickets, cigarettes, and beer, it's crazy. His business started failing.
So why did he stop all that, or was it just?
He was hemorrhaging money. Like it was.
Okay.
He started. He was really trying to do the meat business.
Okay.
But he bought the convenience store and a crack den. Like,
Right.
the only thing they're selling is beer, cigarettes, and lottery tickets. So I gathered from him what I could, and it was great. I ended up working at a quote-unquote gourmet butcher shop. That's a small chain up here, and basically they did like marinated steak tips and like specialty steaks and stuff like that. So that's where I was able to really like hone some of my stuff, because I was actually working now. Like, I was really putting in the time, because there was times towards the end we didn't have meat to cut in the other shop, of just like, okay. But from there, I ended up managing 3 different locations there. Because they had 4 locations and shut one down, but I managed 3 of the 4 at different periods. I did all the ordering for my store, at least, like, and then essentially managed the rest of the entire store, not just the back of the house. And when we bought our house now, I had moved on to like another random steak shop to move in with my wife, like in the southern part of the state. And I was like, we were moving up north, and I said, I'm applying to every slaughterhouse in the state of New Hampshire and Maine. Like, I don't care if they're not hiring. I'm bringing in an application and at least talking to them and being like, if something comes up, you say jump, I say how high kind of situation. And nothing came to it. We moved in here, and I ended up going back to work at the gourmet shop for a little while. And I went back to my boss, and I'm like, listen, I don't want to be here. And I don't want to be here, but I'm here. And about the second week of me being there, the owner of the store was screaming through like the walk-in case and looking at everything, looking at all the managers going, I want every goddamn butcher we got in this store to see this is what we want our cases to look like. This is how like things need to be. And if they're not, they're gone. And I was like, all right, I still got it. That works. So, and then the next day I get a phone call from one of the slaughterhouses that was an hour from my house going, hey, you want a job? And I said, yes. I had to call my boss and go, hey, buddy, remember that thing I told you about when I said if I got a slaughterhouse job, I was leaving? He goes, how long do I have you? Which was awesome. He was great and helped me out in that situation. But I ended up working at a USDA facility for 5 years. Yeah, right around 5 years. I started as, 4 years. Math isn't my strong suit. Meat is.
Sorry.
And they were fantastic. I started as a cutter. It was a small mom and pop, like husband and wife ran it. And there was probably 9 people total that worked there. And I started as a cutter there and really just learned everything I could. I sucked up every piece of information that I possibly could, because at that point I was literally living my dream of like, I wanted to learn how to break down whole animals. And every day now I'm breaking down whole animals like 9 hours a day in a 40-degree cooler. And I was the happiest person on the face of the planet. Like, it was fantastic. But they saw that I was interested, and I asked questions, and I did everything. And I still had all my retail experience and packaging and all that. So at first I was their like runner on the packing side. If they needed help, I'd run over, package, run the cryovac machines. They ended up losing the person that did all their grinding. So I ground and made sausage for them forever, because I've made an ungodly amount of wing sausage and no one there knew how. And I was like, oh, I know how. And they're like, how did we not know this? Like, and made link sausage over there, and then ended up going on to the slaughter floor. I was just kind of the guy that if somebody was out sick, I'd jump over like for the day. And that completely blew my mind and changed everything. Because at this point, like I was still working like retail, like cutting ribeyes and flat meat.
Sure.
That's what we cut. But I can't tell you the number of free deer I cut up just to cut something up, like just to have the experience of like, so this is how all this works. Like, because at this point I'm just getting everything in cryovac bags as primals, and it's like I know what this is, but where does it go? So really, like, having someone teach me to break down whole animals was.
So you work. How many years did you work in butchery until you actually dealt with a side or a whole animal?
8 years.
That's so. You probably don't. My dad was a butcher and a meat cutter his entire life. So from 17 at a little place just like you talked about until he retired a couple of years ago, he cut meat. And for him, I mean, the first 20 years was whole animal or a side of an animal. It would get delivered and they cut everything down. And he saw the progression as it went to, smaller.
That has to be the
quarters. He didn't. I mean, it was easier on his body because he didn't have to manhandle all that meat, of course. But yeah, and I never thought that. He always said it that people would, the new meat cutters. He always said they're glorified packers. It didn't mean that in a bad way, but it's just they didn't learn the base skills. That's crazy. So no wonder. So how long were you at this the slaughterhouse?
A little over 4 years. I left there last April is when I left there. And now we have our own custom exempt shop on our property. So I do mostly beef, pork, some lamb, some wild game in the wintertime. And we also have a farm here just a small farm based on meat production because I don't have to pay the butcher to cut it. So it's one of those things. But yeah, I was there for 4 years 4.5 years, and I learned everything I possibly could. Asked every question that could be there.
How did you, so during those 4 years, where did the wheel start turning, or how did you decide you were going to quit working for the man and start working for the man?
Well, it's funny because me and Josh have talked about this. Especially, it's something about in the meat industry, it progresses so much because you think you're the master, like I can cut primals better than any other person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you don't know about that entire next step of whole animal. And then even if you've done whole animal, then there's the people that do what I do, which is whole animal slaughter, processing, packing, freezer. Like, you do everything.
Wow.
Like, there's so many steps to it. So when I started at the slaughterhouse, I had already had it in my head that I wanted to do my own thing at one point. Like, I wanted to own my own business where I processed animals. Like, at that point, I had done a decent amount of deer and stuff like that. I knew I could do it. And like, we bought this location with that in mind. My shop we have a 70 by 50 detached garage that I've split in half. So like, one half is just a workshop and the other half is my entire commercial, like, butchering setup.
Okay.
So, well, it's not commercial, custom exempt, but so I had already known at that point that I was going to be doing that and just wanted to learn everything. So I tried my best too. And then, the fake flu came around and prices got up, and they tried the USDA was trying to get real shisty with how they were starting to do things. And it's like, no, my bosses were blatantly looked right at them and they're like, we're not doing it. If you like have a problem with it, you guys can leave and we'll be custom exempt. That's it. Like, you can leave. And it was a great moment because, like, to see them stand up for us, like, who were working there, it was like, hell yeah, that's awesome.
So so you've said custom exempt a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I think most people know USDA, but
right. So USDA is essentially the government, like, the U.S. government has the USDA, which oversees food production, essentially. So if you bring your animal to a USDA facility, there is an inspector there usually all the time. At least for New Hampshire, the inspector has to go through and do like a check every morning and go, and it honestly doesn't even have to be every morning. Usually it's once a week on the cut floor, but every morning they have to go through, make sure everything's clean, everything's sanitized, this, that, and the other, all of the normal things you would probably do before you slaughter an animal kind of thing.
Sure.
And then they have to come in once the carcass is hanging. They come in, check for worms, injuries, stuff like that, that you don't want that meat. Like, you don't want to feed that to someone. If there's hair on the carcass, stuff like that. It's a lot of hubbub for, yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not his real name, so I can say it. Yeah. We had an inspector, and I dubbed him Scooter because he was about my height. I'm 6'4". He was about my height, and I probably had a good 50 to 60 pounds on him. Like, and I'm not like a fat guy.
You're not a big dude.
Like beanpole. And he would not make eye contact with anyone. And we found out through the progression of having him, he grew up in like New York City and was a very liberal person. And they dropped him at a slaughterhouse in the middle of New Hampshire that had a sticker on the front door of a silhouette target that says, "If you can read this, you're in range." So I had come up with this whole backstory about him, like on his at his father's like bedside as he's dying, and him just going, "Son, you need to live on my dream of become a USDA meat inspector." And he just pissed somebody off and ended up in Barnstead, New Hampshire. The guys on the slaughter floor would have battles with him. But essentially, my point is, everything the guys on the slaughter floor were doing, everything we were doing, is just common sense food safety. Like, right. And I know the amount of money they had to pay per hour for him to be there. And it was insane. Like, it was a crazy number that didn't make sense.
Sure.
And so custom exempt, essentially I'm just an independent contractor kind of thing. Like, I am just, so what it is people bring me their animals to process for their family.
Right.
And that is a fairly broad.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I do.
So I've gotten very good at explaining to a lot of people, if that makes sense. Yeah. So there are gray areas in a lot of stuff, which is nice.
So, okay. When I was a kid, I remember I was probably 5 or 6. Dad's like, "We're going to go buy some butcher gear." So we drove down the French shore. We met this old drunk Frenchman that was probably in his 70s. And Dad bought everything he had for pretty cheap. Set it up in our basement. We had a dirt floor basement. And people used to bring deer, mainly deer.
It's probably easier to clean.
Oh, man. I can't believe he ever did it. And they used to. So he worked at an IGA, which was a chain grocery store. In the 80s, people used to bring wild game in after hours, and they would butcher it there. I have
stories of people who do that now. It's
really okay. Sure. If it happened anyway,
it's wildly illegal. But
sure.
I have stories of people still doing that now. Like
so if they ran short on meat, they used to have, back in the day, they used to have salesmen. So, everybody would come down and be like, "You need to buy your meat." Everything comes centralized now, but before it didn't, right? So if they were low on meat, the guy would throw 3 or 4 sides of beef in the back of his truck, drive it 3 hours, and bring it down to him.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember all. Yeah. So
those are still the shenanigans I'm getting into now. So.
Well, that's what I think it's. So are you now New Hampshire, live free and die, that sort of, or die, not and die, or die. Yeah. Everything's changing, but so is that, I'm sure it's very state by state.
It's very state by state. Like, okay. I have very minimal oversight. Actually none, really.
Okay.
Just because, like, if I was being shisty and like slinging chops out of the door as I'm working, then I'd get on the radar of like someone that would be coming in going, "Hey, what are you doing? This is illegal." But again, but you look at Josh Josh is jumping through so many hoops just to do essentially the same thing I'm doing, but because they're in a hyper aggressive agricultural community where it's, you have all these massive slaughter facilities, all these massive farms and stuff like that, they can afford to make the laws the way they are and put them in that way to, it's like, screw the middleman. We're going to get all the business. Sure. New Hampshire is in this weird limbo of, we have a very large agricultural community, but not enough that it makes like a fuss.
Sure.
Like, but the people that live in that community are like, we're struggling. Like, there's need for everything. We have, I think, 2 or 3 USDA facilities left in the state. And we had people come driving 30 sheep every 2 weeks up from Rhode Island to come to us. There's not the infrastructure up here that needs to be. And I think a lot of that is them also just going, we don't care. Like, we're not going to bust your balls on a lot of this. So
what does it take to set up what you set up then where you are?
Go ahead. Yeah. So essentially it's, first thing is a walk-in. Like, that's obviously the main thing that you need when you do something like this. We rigged it for a while. We had the CoolBot system with the ACs and everything when I was doing small scale stuff. Then once we went out our own, we had a CoolBot, we had an AC fail, and I lost a customer out of it. Like, we didn't have meat in there, but we lost a customer out of it, and I completely understood. But we had to make the investment, and we spent a boatload of money on a condenser unit. That was the greatest decision I've ever made. Like, nice. It's all automated. I don't have to do anything with it. I know it's going to be between 35 and 37 degrees all day, depending on the temperature outside. So, and then other than that, it's all about the level of what you want to do. I always tell every person that they can process their own animals, because you can figure it out. It's not complete rocket science, but it's you're involved, you're doing it. So for like a small scale person, you get some hand saws and some knives. If you're getting to my level, I have a full bandsaw. I've got a 250-pound capacity grinder. I've got 4 freezers running. Like, we got a lot of stuff going on. It's not your average setup. I've had to get into the mindset of, because I'm a pessimist 90% of the time about myself. And I just go, I'm just a dude in my garage, blah, blah, blah. And everyone has to go, you have a full butcher shop with 2 900-pound beef hanging in it. This isn't just your garage kind of thing. So
it doesn't get any better, man. That's just that seems to run in our community. It runs in the entrepreneurial, the content creation, all of it. So it's okay. You're kicking ass and taking names, but for some reason our brain just sometimes doesn't like to let us flick that switch, eh?
Well, I think it needs to be the type of people we are, where we're always striving for more. We're always striving to be better. We can't afford to be, this is fine. Like, you can't afford that, because as soon as you do that, you're not going to progress anymore.
No, if I do that, I get bored and I got to move on to something else.
Exactly.
So, can we slide? Well, okay. There was a question I wanted to grab first, and then I want to ask you about the CoolBot. So Cabot said, and this kind of goes back a ways, but I think he was talking about what's the progression in the meat industry. You talked about it a bit, but maybe just kind of gloss over it quick again.
Oh, I apologize. So
no, you're good.
Yeah, cutter is, and I even use the abbreviation. Cutter is like a breakdown cutter. So you are taking out a whole half a beef. There was 3 of us there. I learned, my buddy who worked there was in his 40s. He grew up in Brazil. His dad was a butcher. So it's super cool to learn some of that, because he taught me some of that style of how how breaking down beef and pigs and stuff like that. Because that's also how I was saying, once you learn something and you think you're hot shit, you're nothing because that. Then you go to another part of the world and they are insane masters of it. And it's like, I can't win. I'm good at this. This is what I got. So essentially a breakdown cutter is, like I said, you bring out a whole half of beef and you just completely break it down, just like it says. Debone everything, cut roasts, cut steaks, whether you're using the bandsaw to do bone-in cuts, stuff like that, trimming everything up, making sure it's not too fatty or trim off blemishes, stuff like that. So essentially, you're getting it case ready, as like it would be somewhat said, of just like, all right, this would what goes in the case.
With probably by being as efficient and waste free as possible too, hey?
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Even the level I'm at now, I know I can be better, but it's like I can do a whole 700-pound beef cut and package by myself in like 9 hours.
Okay.
Which, that's a barometer. I know there are people that can do it way faster, but for me, I've worked a real hard time to be able to go, yeah, I can take an entire 700-pound cow and put it in a freezer, like besides grinding.
Sure.
So
what about so I've seen the ads for them and I've heard people in passing talk about them. So are the CoolBots, well, what is a CoolBot, and are they even a decent option? Obviously you didn't have a great,
I think they're a great option.
Okay.
I really do, depending on what you're doing. If you're trying to run a custom exempt butcher shop, do not waste the money on that. Spend it on a good system. And also you'll sleep better at night. Like so essentially what a CoolBot is it's this little controller that you buy that you can hijack AC units with. And essentially it connects to, I forget now I'm thinking about it. Something plugs into it, and then you wrap a heater around the thermostat of the AC. And essentially what it does is it tells the AC that it's warmer in the room than it is. So it makes the AC pump out colder air. They work great.
So much could go wrong, though, I'm thinking.
So much goes wrong, especially in my climate, because it was always a gamble. So in my walk-in, I still have it hooked up. I also have a cold air intake, which is essentially just one of those turbo fans that you'd see to like dry a gymnasium floor.
Yep.
That I put 3-inch PVC, 3 of them into it, and drilled it into the wall. And I have that on a temperature controller. So when it's 20 degrees out, I couldn't run the AC. It wouldn't run because it's going to freeze. So I would just blow in cold air from outside and put exhaust pipes on the other side so it had good circulation. But it depends on your climate. It depends on what you're really doing. Yeah, I know Josh has used CoolBots a ton.
And because can you hook up multiple AC units to one CoolBot, or do they each have?
I've seen people do it. I have never done it personally. I've seen people hook them up to
heat pumps.
Yes.
Or like, mini splits or whatever.
Yeah, mini splits. That's it. I apologize. Yep. Yeah. I've seen people hook them up to that network. And honestly, that's still an option for me for my cut room, like my cut area of doing something like that. I've thought about getting a mini split and like at least dropping it to 50. Or something along those lines. So it's cooler in there this time of year. I've got a couple ACs running in there right now. So
how do you build your own freezer then? Because I get the idea of a CoolBot or a compressor. So then is it just basically a room with metal or plastic?
It's just a room. But essentially my buddy's a carpenter and he came up and did some work with us. And my cooler is 14.5 by 5.5. And I wish it was double the size.
Sure.
I wish it was. But I wish it wasn't. We just framed out a room. And then what I have to hang everything on is just 2-inch steel pipe. And we took 2x6s and doubled them up, put them up top and drilled some holes in them to put the pipe in. And it works fantastic.
So you don't have to have puck board or anything lining.
So what I have on it is I have fiberglass insulation in the walls, and then I have 1.5-inch styrofoam, like the shiny side styrofoam.
Oh yeah.
On it, and it really keeps it pretty cool. And then I just have everything siliconed all around it so I can clean it better. And then we epoxied the floors in the shop before, like, when
probably
we were
a good
building
idea.
everything. And that was one of the best ideas I ever had too. Like, makes cleaning so much easier.
So what, I know this is going to vary in different places, but what's the difference between, well, do you know roughly what a cool block costs?
$300.
Oh, that's not bad. Now, how much does an industrial compressor cost?
$10,000.
Oh, so a few. So yeah, about
just
30
a little bit
cool
more.
blocks. So yeah.
So that was a hit.
Yeah, I bet it was. Has it paid for itself yet?
It's paid for itself and more.
That's awesome.
It's crazy.
I just want to slide back a little bit. So you said, right as soon as you started the USDA facility, you knew you wanted, or you kind of had the desire to be your own boss. Do you know what clicked, or what motivated you to want to become your own boss or find that freedom? Do you remember? Was there a moment, or was it a gradual, or what was it?
It was gradual for sure, but it, like I said, it evolved. When I was doing a lot of retail, I thought about opening a retail store, and just like, I'm already managing all of these people. I already know what goes into this. It's just the business side that I need to figure out. And then once it progressed further of like doing whole animal breakdowns and stuff like that, I'm like, this is just the coolest shit I've ever done in my entire life. And if I can just do this for myself, I'll be happy. That's amazing. Like, and obviously it's progressed from there.
So how did you learn the business side of it? Because that's a whole nother beast, right?
We're still learning.
Okay. Fair. That's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We're trying to figure it out. And it's the other section of it is we're also starting the farm at the exact same time. Like,
right.
We're ramping up as much of that as we can as well. Doing floor drains. Yeah.
Josh put it 3 times, so I figured it must be important. Floor drains.
Yeah. It's super important. It changes your life. It really does. I don't have them. It sucks. But
the business side.
So the farm, we are really taking the deep dive into raising pigs, and hitting that market. And we sell wholes and halves. So essentially the customers come and they pay a deposit, and that's now their pig.
Oh,
and then
nice.
In a custom exempt shop, I can only cut up somebody else's pig.
Right.
Well, paid $100 deposit. That's their pig. They get a hang weight, and that's all my fee for board and feeding comes out of the hang weight. And also you pay for slaughter fees and stuff like that. So I'm kind of hitting that gray area of figuring it all out. So we've started a breeding program with our pigs up here. I'm trying. Of course, I can't do it easy. I can't just buy a bunch of Yorkshires and put them in a pen and sell them.
Sure.
I got to go all out. We're doing some specialty breeding, trying to produce a pig that does really, really well in this climate. So we've got Herefords for our gilts, they're just a big, bulky. I think they're produced in Iowa, I think. Okay. But they're just freaking bulldogs, and they grow super quick. And we're crossbreeding them with our boar is Mangalitsa and Ossabaw Island Hog. So I've got some pretty aggressive heritage breeds there, and we're kind of playing Dr. Moreau. I'm losing growth rate, because it's like when you get to the Mangalitsas and the Ossabaws, that's a 16-month grow out, like to get to bone maturity of where you're supposed to slaughter. And then you have, I think my biggest Hereford I raised last year that I put in my freezer was 276 on the hook at 6-7 months. But with the Mangalitsas and the Ossabaws, they have fantastic feed conversion. The Mangalitsas is super hairy, and they're fat producers, which is something I'm looking for, because we're going to be doing pigs year round. And it gets cold up here. We get 3-foot storms. It's
Yeah.
it's not super fun. And to raise livestock up here is tough. Half the year you're just feeding it to keep weight on it because it's 10 degrees out.
So whenever you talk to people about livestock, there's chickens, there's cattle, almost everybody says don't touch pigs because it's hard to make any money in them. So why did you do pigs, and how are you going to make money?
I was talking to someone today about this, and it's, if I didn't have the shop, I wouldn't be going as deep as I am.
Sure.
Because the slaughtering process and like getting your animal cut up is the most expensive part of raising pigs. It just is. Or raising most livestock. It's like, yes, over time, depending on what you're raising and how long you're raising it, feed's going to be expensive and stuff like that. But for an upfront, this is what this costs. For most people, processing is going to be it. And a lot of people don't know. Like, they just go, which I love, but they just go, I'm going to start raising my own food. And it's like, you've got 4 pallets and a pig. I don't know what you're doing. And you should probably make an appointment with me or someone now, because you're going to have to pay to have the animal processed. Oh, well, that's going to be, well, when that pig gets to 250 pounds hang weight, and I charge $1 a pound and then $2 a pound for sausage, and you want half of it turned into sausage, you're going to get a rude awakening. And I don't think it's explained to a lot of people when they first get started that that's a shock to the system, especially if you're raising more than one animal.
And just the idea of if you, I mean, when we did this, we did pigs just 1 year and we enjoyed it, but you've got a 250-pound dead animal that you then need to figure out how to hoist up or do something with.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It's, most people don't have tractors. It's just like a hobby farm, or, so you have to figure something out. We ended up using a 4-wheeler and putting it on a tarp and pulling it over, and then using a winch to pull it up. But yeah, like a lot of people don't think about it.
Yeah. We now have a tractor, which is super nice.
Sure.
But no, just to get back to what you were saying about why we're doing pigs.
Yeah.
It's just the turnaround on them. Like the fact that I can take something, and again, factoring in how I'm breeding, I'm shooting myself in the foot with how I'm breeding my pigs. But with a 10-month grow out, give or take, is what I'm kind of shooting for. I can still turn that over quicker than doing beef or doing something like that. Because up here, it's I don't know, at least 20 months, like for 20 to 24 months to do a beef up here. Because like I said, half the year, you're just feeding it to keep weight on it.
Sure.
Unless you're just graining the hell out of it.
That gets expensive.
And that gets super expensive.
So you've been doing this for, what, about 3 years, you said now? Is it been full-time for 3 years, or?
Full-time it was a year in April.
Oh, year. So, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we're still pretty fresh.
How's it going?
We're getting there. We're figuring it out. We're going through the growing pains of starting a business and a farm all at the same time. So we're building infrastructure on both the shop and the farm. Bartering helps, which is fantastic. And that's another. So we live in a small town, and there's a lot of people that have lived there their whole lives, and they are just, our neighbors are contractors. They own an excavation company, concrete company. So they just poured a slab for us to build a slaughter floor. They're going to be building a bunch of stuff for us, and it's for where we stand now, for what they've done, it's 2 pigs and a half a cow. And they've done the amount of things they've done on my property to help me I'd be looking at $300,000 for all of it. And it's just fantastic to have, one, be in a small town and have neighbors that are like that to help you and are willing to do it. And they're just so generous, and we'll be talking about something, and he's like, that's not the last pig I'm getting from you, right? And I'm like, I'll give you a pig a year. I don't care. Because they plow out my road. They plow out some of my back roads into the field so I can get to the things I need over the winter. I can't do it with my truck. They bring their front end loader over and plow me out a path. Like, it's to have neighbors like that is amazing. And I'm happy to barter with them till the cows come home. Like, it's just worth it. They're like, you're feeding us. We see our food. It's right across the street. Like, we'll do whatever we can to help.
I did snow removal for a butcher shop this year and turned it into a side of beef. So it's a great way of doing it. Have you had a bad day in business yet? Like a really, really bad day? If you can't remember,
I've had a couple crappy days.
Yeah.
And yeah, probably the most recent one is I had never really done like large scale smoking of like bellies and stuff like that.
Okay.
My wife's uncle built me a smokehouse. I put it on a snowmobile trailer so I couldn't get nailed on taxes for having a standard structure. And I was like, we're going to get this done. And my first batch came out fantastic. I couldn't have been happier with it. And then my second batch did not come out great. And it was like, I think it was 8 bellies. And it was just something stupid that I didn't do. And I didn't weigh down the belly. So there was part of it that was sticking out of the brine, and all 8 bellies turned. And I had to call all those people and go, I am so sorry, but you have no bacon coming, and I will make it right. But it's not going to make this bacon come back to life. Like, I am so sorry. And that's probably been my most like heartbreaking moment. Other than that, it's just normal farm shit of like, well, looks like I need to go into town 3 times on 3 different trips because I haven't bought the right parts to start my tractor. And there's a cow staring at me that's mooing at me. And I'm screaming over my shoulder, like, this aggression's going to go somewhere. So like, calm down. I'm coming.
So how did you, it was a bad day where things went belly up, you could say. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I can't, that one's a good one. I can't be mad about that one.
So did you think about quitting?
Oh God, no.
No, that's fucking, I love to hear that. So what did you do to make it right, or have you had a chance to yet?
Most of those people are coming back.
Okay.
And that was the first things out of their mouth. They're like, because I told everyone when I did it, I was like, I will do it for free. Mm-hmm. But you need to know, I've never done this before. So it could be bacon or it could not. Like, I need you all to know this. Like, if you're worried about it, please take your belly. I'll cut it into manageable pieces so you can do it for home use. Here's recipes. Here's everything. Here's everything you need to do this yourself. But if you want to take the risk and let me do it, I'm happy to do it. But you need to know this.
That's a lesson anybody can take, any entrepreneur out there, because the fact that you were 100% upfront with everybody, like, hey guys, I'm going to experiment. That's really fucking cool, man.
And it's a lot of people last year who bought pigs. They were family and friends, but I did have a couple of customers who weren't. Like, they just got my name from someone and they bought a pig. But yeah, no, it sucked. Like, it was awful. But at that point, it's like, okay, I know not to do that now. I've grown from this moment. I don't ever want to do this again.
Sure.
Like, and that's just one of those days that just compounds of just like, I found out all the bellies like were gone. Well, then the person who's dropping off their beef is late. Okay. Now they got to leave right away. So I can't drop it in the trailer. They got to put it in the corral because I'm not ready for it yet either. Then all of a sudden it twitches at the last moment and I've got a 500-pound cow backflipping into me because they twitched at the last moment and the shot was off. Like,
oh no.
It was one of, I take it all back. That was a shit day.
Sure, that's okay though. I love hearing about them. And I want everybody to hear about the worst days in entrepreneurship, because if you can handle the worst fucking days, you can handle the best days, you know?
Right.
Renegade says, I've done a few jobs for free because I was up front and fucked it up, but that's how we learn.
Yep. That's so the only way.
You're pasturing pork. Hey, you're not doing pens. Is that right? or is it a combination?
It's a combination of both. I have got a 3-acre section that I just, if anyone wants to jump over to my YouTube channel, I've been putting out a decent amount of videos of, we're building a new, like, it's around 3 acres pasture for our pigs.
Okay.
I do hardwire because I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Like, I have this weird thing in my head where I've just shot too many of them, that the pig gods are going to be out to get me at some point and make my life hell. So I'm going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that nothing's getting out, kind of thing. But yeah, so we're going to be moving into trying to do some more rotational grazing kind of thing, and just giving them a place to move and run around, especially with these breeds I'm putting in. They pack on fat. If you just put them in a pen for like a 20 by 20 pen for their entire lives. I just did 2 crosses, which are actually the exact same cross as my boar. Okay. And they were in a 20 by 15 foot pen for 13 months. The meat on them was fantastic. But to put it in perspective, I think it was close to a 400-pound hang weight for both of them.
Okay.
And they got 17 5-pound packages of back fat.
Oh my God. So 85. So almost a quarter of it. Or yeah almost a quarter of it. Wow.
So, and to combat that, it's feed and having them have the ability to move and run around. It's like, again, you can buy a Yorkshire, which is like the big pink production pigs, and you can put them in a 20 by 20 pen and you're fine. You can raise something that's going to be 250 pounds in 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
I know people that do it. I don't really have a problem with it. I just know that's not how I want to do it. But meat's muscle. So if you got something that's running around, that's rooting, that's going through trees, that's really just working out, you're going to have better meat. It's going to be more tender, have better marbling.
Is your feed bill going to be lower on pasture? Or not? That's what I was thinking.
Okay. Pigs is tough. Pigs is a tough one to pasture on. At some point, I'll probably expand the pasture. For right now, this is as good of a pasture as they're going to get for the next couple of years to try and figure it out. But again, with the size, I can put 10, 15 pigs in there if I want. And they're going to have the space to move. Yeah, are they going to moonscape it a little bit? Sure. But it all just depends on how we move them, where we move them, because we do have plans to do other pens on other parts of the property. Just that's going to be the designated pig area. And the hard part when you're doing a lot of them is you need those auxiliary spaces, because you don't know when a boar needs to go somewhere. You don't know when you have something that's going to be sick. Mystery litters, like stuff like that. You need as many spots to put pigs as possible. I'm finding now.
What's your either firearm or caliber of choice for dispatching?
So this is a little bit of a battle between some butchers. I use a 45 long Colt. I've got the Taurus Judge. I love it.
One that'll shoot 410
a lot
as well?
of it. Huh?
You can put a 410 shell in it too?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't have them up here.
If I wasn't on YouTube.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I love it. It's fantastic. It's worked really well. I picked it up for like $400, and I did 22 for a little while. It really only was like 1 or 2 pigs, and I was like, I'm not playing this game. Like, I want to make sure it's down, and I ended up buying like a little single shot 410, and that worked amazing for a long time. And then COVID hit, and good luck finding 410 shells. Yeah. Even to this day, I can't. The only ones I can find are like the Judge package home defense rounds, which is like a slug and a.
Right. Yeah. I got a case back here, but I can't send them to you. So
I appreciate it.
We've put like 12 rounds through our 410 over the 5 years. I bought it thinking I'd use it with my girls, but I used a 30-30 for my pigs because
that's a lot.
It is. So those are my options. I had a 22 or a 30-30, and I heard way too many stories of the bullet grazing off or bouncing off, and I did not want to have to deal with that.
No, for that choice, the 30-30 was the correct choice. But
absolutely.
I'm sure the head was probably like,
you know what? It wasn't bad.
Really?
So my uncle made head cheese out of both the heads, and they were fairly contained. It was a pretty close shot, and
if it was a super close shot, then you're probably it's just
I was like this far, and it was an old round, so the velocity was probably a little lower. It was nothing special, but it did the trick. So
I buy the Cowboy Action rounds for bulk, so they're already packed a little bit looser. Like that's don't have as much velocity. Most cows, unless they're like a smaller dairy breed, usually they don't even leave the skull. Pigs, I'll usually find them in the lower jaw. And it's just been an all around good round for me.
So have you made head cheese before? Because Cabot's asking what it is.
I have wanted to.
Okay. I don't love it. I grew up with a butcher for a dad.
So
bring home things. Beef tongue was one. Whatever. Love beef heart. That was fine.
Got 5 in the freezer currently.
Blood pudding. Have you ever had blood pudding?
I have not.
Okay, don't bother.
No, that one I wasn't too pumped about trying.
And head cheese. So for those, what it reminds me of is, when you open a canned ham and it has that gelatin on it, it's more gelatin than it is meat. And it's, I don't know, you boil the brain and I don't know. Anyway,
you essentially take the whole head, and if you're doing it correctly, take the whole head and the feet because all the collagen in it, and boil it. You boil the piss out of it until it all starts to fall apart, and put in a bunch of aromatics and vegetables, stuff like that, just to make that broth better. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking all the collagen and fat out of it and then making Jell-O, essentially. Like then you add gelatin to it, and then you make pulled pork out of the face and out of all the feet, and then you put it back in there. And when I say the whole head, I mean the eyeballs, tongue, all the glands, like all of it. There's no discretion on head cheese. If it's on the head, it's in the head cheese.
Who come up with that? It's like learning how to tan a pie.
Really poor person.
Absolutely. Wow.
I've seen some really good preparations of it where I'm like, if I was there, time and place, I would eat it. I don't have the patience to sit there and boil a head, because I did European taxidermy for a real long time.
I'm going to ask you about that. Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, hold on, let me get. Yeah, that was a 13-year-old Texas Longhorn.
Okay.
From a farm up here.
So for people who don't know what European taxidermy is, fill us in.
So European taxidermy is just like the skull mount. So it's essentially the way I did the boil method, which was essentially you just take the head. If it has antlers, you tape off the antlers so they don't get discolored. If they've got horns like this, you can pop the horn cores off. So these, like the horns right here, these actually is a sheath that comes off the actual horn core. So inside of this usually is bone.
Right.
But you can boil those off. And then I essentially boil the piss out of it with a bunch of OxyClean as a degreaser and pressure wash the crap out of it. And just do that over and over again until it's clean. And then I used a pool peroxide. And
so you got the white.
Cut it with water, and you boil it in it for an extended period of time, and it makes them crazy white. And then it all depends on how crazy you want to get with it and what you're doing. I've done some pretty awesome deer. Like we had a pretty awesome 15-point come through that was just I'll never do another one like that. It was just incredible. And then same with this guy. Like I did for this farm, they came to the slaughterhouse I worked at, and I had started getting into this, and my boss mentioned to him about like me buying some of the skulls green meaning like right off the cow, like all
Sure.
the hide and everything's on it from him. And he said, well, what if I just hire him to clean my skulls? Because then he would take them and resell them. I don't even know how much he resold them for. Because at that point, I was just so excited to be able to do it. I didn't care. I was getting paid $250 per skull. Like,
wow.
Yeah, it's one of those markets. It's like, it's there.
Yeah.
But I just don't have time anymore to watch water boil. Like,
I get you.
I don't. I really don't.
So we went through South Dakota, touched into Wyoming, and then Montana. And you notice it's more of a thing down there than it is up here, but it's still kind of common where they take some sort of bullhead or something, the skull, and they hang it up over the entrance of the ranch.
Yep.
And I wonder, I mean, there's probably no significance behind it other than it says that it's a cattle ranch, but I often wondered where that tradition ever came from. You ever heard any, like?
I don't. I mean, if you want to go back to like why taxidermy is a thing, there are so many old stories about like.
Really? Like what?
I think it was the Inuits. When they would kill a polar bear, they would bring the head of the polar bear home and put it on the mantle of the home so that the polar bear's soul, like wherever it went, could communicate with the other polar bears that it was like, if you have to die, you can die from their hands because they're respecting me. They're using every part of me. And like, so there's all that kind of stuff. And then there's just the people that was like, see that thing I shot? Like it's the spectrum.
I appreciate it. I look at it as you're honoring the animal a little bit. I always have, because you've got one or two options. I mean, well, three. I mean, you're going to eat it. Hopefully eat it. If you don't eat it, you're a dick. But if other than that, like if you're just shooting an animal for a trophy, well, whatever. Anyway, but I mean, you're going to eat it. So why not take that, the beauty of it, take it home and mount it? Right. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I like, because I've been doing it so long at this point, you just learn so many different parts of the animal. Like I know, because I cut this cow up back in the day, like I knew that this was a 13-year-old longhorn steer.
Sure.
And it's, when you look at, you can't see it on here. If you look around like the eyes and the horn cores and everything, there's so much more calcification on the animal because it was so much older, and like the skull's cracked in a different way from the gunshot because it was so solid that it didn't just bullet hole in, whatever. The whole skull is cracked. Like it's you learn so much more the deeper you go in. And I'm one of those people that I want to learn, like I want to learn to use every part of the animal. Like I do. So to learn how to do this, I was like, yeah, obviously I'm going to learn what to do with that because it's there. And I know someone's done it. So I'm going to do it. I have everything I have to tan hides. I've just never done it because I don't have the time. Like,
I get you.
So that's just kind of me as a person, though. I want to learn to do whatever I can.
The first deer I shot, I did a European mount myself. Just boiled it in my shop on a turkey deep fryer for as long as I could, and then I pressure washed it. Then my brother-in-law took the head and painted it. He gave it kind of like a native look to it, like dark blue skies with. It was really neat. And I saved the first two hides of the first deer I did and taught myself how to tan those as well. They're still hanging up. I don't know what I'll ever do with them.
Awesome.
They're hanging up in the garage. I'm not even sure I can remember how to do it, but I probably could fail through it again, Yeah.
So I've got a pretty good story when it comes to European taxidermy. So I was going through turkey fryers like it was my job, like just burning them out. And I would also use like the big galvanized like wash basins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I knew I had skulls to do when I got home, and it was one of those days that they needed me on the slaughter floor. So they're like, hey, come over for the day. I wasn't prepped, so I just had on like my cut clothes. So I was disgusting. Like I was just a hot mess, covered in blood, head to toe. Like my arms were kind of clean. And then I realized when I got in the truck, like my face was just covered in blood. I'm like, I don't care. I'm exhausted. Like I need to go get a turkey fryer. go to Lowe's, walk in, sold out turkey fryers. And I'm like, oh, what the hell? And I'm like, I am not going to let this opportunity pass me up. So I went and grabbed a tarp, duct tape, lye, and walked up to the front of the counter and put everything on the I think there was a hatchet in there too. Like, I just was like, let's get all this stuff and we'll go up to the register. And you could visibly see the woman ringing everything up going, okay. And I went, and I am as nice. I'm putting on my best customer service voice. I'm sweet talking this lady. We're chatting back and forth, or I'm talking to her. She's not talking to me at this point. And I go, you know what? I forgot my wallet. I will be right back. And I just walked out and I never went back.
Did you think you were going to get in trouble, or did you just...
I knew I wasn't going to get in trouble because I work at a slaughterhouse. Like, I have a very valid excuse. I was just being a dick. Like,
that's awesome. Oh my God. She's probably told that story 100 times.
I guarantee you and that's why I did it. I really did it for that reason of like, I'm not going to see the result of this, but I know this woman is going to go home shaken. Like, she's going to go home and tell her husband, like, I think I saw a murderer today.
Either that or they're filming a new Discovery series, one or the other. So. Right,
exactly.
So what, so what's your favorite steak and why is it ribeye? No, I'm just kidding. That's mine. But no, I bet it isn't. But what's your favorite cut? And then I always like to see, is there an odd one that you recommend that some people don't talk about?
I'm a chuck guy myself. So like, obvious. So chuck eyes are amazing. And
same thing that Adam from Modern Frontier said when he was on.
Mm-hmm. They're fantastic. And it's the unknown cut. It really is. If the butchers don't swipe it themselves at the grocery store, get it. Like, you'll never see a manager special on a chuck eye. Because essentially what it is it's the very start of the ribeye primal in the chuck. So it's $3.99 a pound. Like, so, but I'm a huge fan of like the chuck as a primal because there's so many things you can do with it. You can do roasts, you can do thin cut steaks, you can do chuck eyes, stew, stir fry, Denver steaks. Like, there are so many things you can get out of one piece of meat. And then you look at the ribeye and it's like, you got rib steaks and you got prime rib. And if you want to get real fancy, you can do short ribs. And it's like, okay, all right, I get it. Like, I get it, guys.
What's a Denver steak? I don't think I've heard of one of those.
A Denver steak trying to think of how to explain this. There is a piece of muscle on top of the chuck roll that you can pull off and trim up. And it's like you can trim it up. And when you do, it turns into like a little rectangle. And then you just cut those into steaks. Okay. They're good. Huh. It's a super tender piece of meat. Like, it's good for like fondue and stuff like that, or stir fry. And so
back in college, we used to go down and we would buy the cheapest stewing beef we could buy. And we would open fire and we'd roast it on sticks, you know? Whatever. I don't know. It wasn't my idea, but man, it was good.
It goes down with beer. It doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah. It was so good. Just don't choke on it. But, it was good.
Yeah.
So what are your plans going forward? So you got a year in now. You got a farm going. What do you and the missus and the little ones? What are you up to next?
Just kind of chugging along. Right now we're just kind of, like I said, going through the growing pains, like just emotionally and financially of starting a business. So we're just kind of getting on level ground, trying to get the infrastructure done to a point that we can just kind of coast and just put the work in. I've got an amazing customer base right now. I have a ton of return customers that I'm pretty much guaranteed 3 beef a month, if not more. And I know I can bring in other people, like, depending on the weeks, to help supplement it, which is nice. So now essentially it's just really getting the schedule down. And
I don't know why Brian thinks you need a tiger. I don't know if that's an inside joke.
I know exactly why he thinks I need a tiger.
Oh dear God.
Yeah, I don't think the first time I'm on is probably not the best time to break into that story. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
Said you're learning how to podcast and
Yes,
NOSTR as well?
that is the other big step I've taken is the YouTube channel and the podcast and trying to understand all that. In the words of Tom Hanks, I'm not a smart man. So I am trying to figure out all of this computer aspect of it and trying to get into it. I love doing the videos. That's definitely my bread and butter when it comes to this. I just enjoy the editing process, filming, kind of being able to wrap up what you did in a day into all of a sudden it's like, oh, in 15 minutes, I went from kind of knowing what I was doing to at the end of that video, it's completed and it looks good. And I can go back to that and look at it. And we also started a podcast, which has already taken multiple different turns and reformatting. So
was that Meet the Species?
Meet the Critters.
Meet the Critters. That's it. I was close.
Yeah.
That's better. I like Meet the Critters better. Sounds like an 80s horror movie, you know?
Exactly. So
I meant to tell you that the Backwoods Butcher really sounds like a mid-90s indie wrestler. So in case you're wondering, I was like, that sounds like somebody from ECW or somebody that would come through town and be like, you know, hey, you know, come to the local Five and Dime and get an autograph with the Backwoods Butcher, you know?
Well, the name of my shop is The Body Shop.
Oh, nice.
I'm just kind of hitting all the twists and turns, right? So
nothing wrong with that. I like it.
No.
So what about the farm? Where are you heading with that next?
More
of the same?
More of the same. I definitely want to dial in on a breeding program and getting really good, like, at figuring that out. I always joke that I'm learning all this backwards because I know what to do with them after the shot. I know what to do with them when they're dead. And now I'm learning all of this from scratch. I didn't grow up in this at all. I didn't grow up like cut meat or anything like that. I just fell into it and was like, oh, no, this is what I'm doing with my life. And it's like going back to when I started raising livestock. It was chickens and rabbits. And it was because I wanted to learn how to cut them up. Like, it's saying it out loud on a microphone sounds terrifying. But yeah, I wanted the experience. I wanted to put my own meat in my freezer and cut it myself.
Careful of frostbite.
We did our first steer this fall, and I almost cried. Aww. Like, because I watched this thing be born. We bought it from a buddy. We bought three calves to start. Ended up losing one.
I think that's a legitimate question. I'm not sure.
I promise it's not. I promise you it's not a legitimate question.
Some people's kids.
Listen, I have it on private chat. I don't even have that open because I knew it was coming.
So I normally have, admins for this sort of thing. But the problem is I'm pretty sure Brian is one of my
admins. Your admins are the one doing this.
Yes, the trouble. So I appreciate it. So it's okay. We'll let it be. So how do people find you, Kyle? What's the best way to get you so they can support you? Because you're just getting going, right?
Yeah, we're just getting going. We're starting to figure it out. We are on YouTube at Backwoods Butcher 603, and we're on that at everything. So I don't have a Twitter, but it's Instagram, TikTok. I have a couple different Facebook pages that I don't push a bunch of traffic to, but and then we also just started a Telegram group. So I jumped in. So it's called In the Backwoods. So if you search that in Telegram, I think we've got 15, 16 people in there right now. So I'm trying to figure all that out. It was one of those things. I'm like, I'm just going to start it and we'll figure it out as we go along. And the natural group of people who you think would be in that group are already in that group. So it goes off the wire every now and then, but it's just going to be focused mostly on, it's taking the turn to mostly farming. I've posted some processing stuff in there, but I usually post most of that over in Josh's group, the Liberty Meat Chat. just because it's a good spot to have it. And I've had so much more farming talk come into mine, which is, I think it's a good spot to put that too. So we're going to try and do question of the day kind of style stuff as well. So again, at this point, I think I've only been like creating content for like 2 months, which seems like the longest 2 months of my life.
I have this idea. I'd love to have you back at some point for sure. But
oh, absolutely.
We should do, I've had at least 3 butchers on at this point. So maybe we'll have to have a whole bunch of guys on. You guys can I'll just kind of moderate and you guys can fight. I mean, talk about butchering and
me and Josh have actually tossed this idea around back and forth about doing like a roundtable discussion of like small scale butchers. Like, yeah, of like, this is what we've had to do because I've been on Josh's show probably 10 times at this point. Like, I just call he calls me the easy button. It's just like, yeah, Kyle can talk for 2 hours. That's fine. But he had another different butcher out of Oklahoma on, and she was awesome. But she was talking about starting a small scale butcher shop, and she's doing a lot more mobile stuff. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm in the chat just commenting like, I completely understand. I
think you guys would really like Adam from A Modern Frontier. He's out of the Wisconsin area. Okay. Turned out to be a really good buddy of mine, and he's really big on TikTok. And he sends me a lot of like how to improve your content videos and different things. Yeah. But he just started I think it's called the Grass-Fed Beef Initiative, something like that.
I've heard of that.
There's a bunch of small-time grass-fed beef producers from all across the country, and they're all funneling it through one, what do you want to call it? Like through one central website. And depending on what part of the country you're from, when you order, it'll come from whatever your closest. It's fucking awesome.
A lot of people are really starting to do that now, and it's awesome. Like, I love that people are doing it.
It's cool. I'd love to have all 3 of you guys hollering around. I'll introduce Josh wants him, so I'll send him your guys' way. You guys will have a lot of fun because that would be good.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Right. Well, I've got, so you know, I didn't mention it, but I haven't. Yeah, Texas. I think Texas Slim's in on that. I don't know. It could be a different one too. Somebody just asked on K-Bonks, but I've got all your links in the description. So please, guys, you know. Even though Kyle's friends with Renegade Butcher and Brian from the Lots Project, give him some support because he deserves it. Try to find him some better friends because it's just, you know, you don't like to tear people down, but, you know, they say you become.
I do have to say I'm probably the worst person in that group. I rile it up just as much as they do. I can't give them all the credit.
They say you become like the 3 or 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who's the bad influence there, but dude, you're welcome back anytime. I'd appreciate
that. Would be amazing. This has been a super fun conversation. Yeah. I'd love to come back.
You cool to hang around the back for just a second while I close her up? All right. Sure. I'll be right back with you. Guys, I don't know what it is. They told me Kyle should come on, and they weren't wrong, even though it was Brian and Josh who recommended him. I'll take their word for it, but I hope you really appreciate it. It's so nice. It's nice to talk to somebody new and fresh, or just that you haven't talked to before, but man, just support him, guys, in any way you can. Guys that are just getting started in content, guys that are starting their own entrepreneurial journey, anybody else out there, and it doesn't have to be in meat. Get inspired by him because he's doing the shit. He's living the shit. He's lived the shit. So absolutely give him a follow, give him a hug, show him the workshop love. And guys, you know, I appreciate you. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.